Hello traders, Cory Mitchell here. Today going to talk about the one bar or one candle aggressive trailing stop loss. A trailing stop loss is when you move your stop loss as the price moves in your direction to reduce risk or lock in profit. So here is a beautiful example. Go through a couple examples that worked out very well, a couple that didn't work out so well, and so we can see basically all these pros and cons that we're going to talk about. So we'll leave those for now and just show you the basic method. I'm just going to use a little trend line tool to help highlight it. Maybe we'll mark it red. So I like to look for consolidations near key levels. So these consolidations here right near this former high would have been areas of interest. And let's assume that I went short right as the price moved below this candle. So I'm basically looking at this consolidation there and saying if the price drops, you could either use this candle low or this candle low. Price drops through there, I go short. Now my trailing stop loss kicks in. So initially it is above this candle. Right about there. I can delete this box now. Then we have this candle. The stop loss moves to just above it because that's the last candle that's closed. We're using a one candle, one bar stop loss. So as soon as this candle closes, we can move it to above the high. I'm moving it to above the high because I'm short and I'm stopped out here. So I take a tiny loss on this trade, but it saves me from getting stuck in this move up, which may have potentially stopped me out of this whole thing for a full loss. So I still got to reduce my risk quite a bit there, even though I didn't make a profit. Here we have another price consolidates here. This would have been even more visible on the 1 minute chart. Let's say we go short here as the price drops. And then again, when we take that trade, stop loss starts above the most recent candle, drops to there, drops to above this candle, drops to above this candle, above this candle, this candle, above this candle, and it just keeps dropping at the close of each candle. So as soon as this candle closes, I can move the stop loss to above it. Once this candle closes and this is complete and the next one started, then I can move it to there. You can see this would have done a very good job of capturing this entire down move. This is a 5 minute chart, and it's eventually stopped out here, just barely. Now, there are some options with this. You could add a little buffer. Let's say you go the high plus 1 pip, or half a pip, or 2 pips. You can decide what works for you, and because there will be some times where you get this just price moves slightly above. So we have a high of 1252.9. 1253.4. So it moves above the prior candle by half a pip. If you would have had a 1 pip buffer, you would not have been stopped out, assuming you have a tight spread. So adding a 1 or 2 pip buffer could help prevent this type of situation. And in that case, we would have been able to extract a little bit more profit because our trailing stop loss would have dropped to there. It would have stayed where it does. It never moves up. So even though this went half a pip above, we would not move our stop loss up at all if we were still in this trade. We would have maintained it in there, and then we move it to this candle, just above this candle, and let's say we're giving it a 1 pip buffer. Stays there. This one doesn't really make any progress, and then it gets moved to above that one, and we get stopped out here. So right at the bottom of the move, which is fairly rare. But here we would have ended up with a really nice reward to risk. No matter where we got out, even if we got clipped out there, we still would have had about an 8-to-1 reward to risk. If we were risking $100 on this trade, we would have made $800. That's a really nice trade. And if we would have been able to get out way down here, about a 10-to-1. So if we were risking $100 on this trade, we would have been able to make $1,000. So that's how you would do a short trade. The long trade would be exactly the same, except you would trail it up based on, you trail it up via the lows. So if you were going long here, the trailing stop loss would move just above the lows. So you can see once again here, there was a little bit of a move right here where we just dipped below this candle low. So this was a really nice setup. We were in, just started an uptrend, consolidates, price starts moving up. So we would have got potentially long right around in this area here. And if we had no buffer, we would have got stopped out right away, but we could look to re-enter right away. And so let's see how far this one was below. So this one went about a pip below, 1.1 pips, maybe 1.2 pips. So for this one, we would have needed about a 2 pip buffer to avoid that. And sometimes adding the buffer is going to work out well. It's going to keep you in that trade. So in this case, it would have been good because you probably could have kept riding this all the way up. But you can see a couple times here, it just moves just a tiny bit below the prior low. So a little bit of a buffer is usually good. The bigger buffer you give it, the less chance that's going to happen to you, but you're also going to give up more profit when the price actually does reverse. So here, if you're giving it 3 pips, you're going to end up getting out down here, whereas if you give it no room, you get to collect those couple pips as profit, and you're out there. So it's a trade-off. If you give it more room, sometimes you don't get stopped out as quickly, and you get to ride it for a bit more profit. But when the price does reverse, you're going to give back a little bit more profit because you're giving it more room and the price gets to reverse more against you. Another option you do is use a 2 candles. So the 1 bar aggressive trailing stop loss is just one. This is like the base model of this strategy. So you can start adding some customization to it based on how you like to trade by adding a buffer, or you could use 2 candles. 2 candles would just be you're basically trailing it at the lowest point. So if you're going long, the lowest point of the 2 candles. So once this closes, your stop loss still stays down here. Now this candle's closed, so you can take the lowest point of those 2 candles. You have another candle, it stays here because this one hasn't gone. Now once this one closes, it can move up to the lowest point of those 2 candles. Then it moves up to there because those 2 candles, we had that third one. Now it takes the lowest point of those 2 candles and just keeps moving up. And it's basically you're taking the lowest point of the last 2 candles as opposed to the last candle only. Same with the stop loss. You'd look at, or if you're taking a short, the high point of the last 2 candles would be your trailing stop loss. So that'd be another option that you could use. Instead of just using 1 candles, you could use 2. Let's look at some of the pros and cons. This is applicable on any time frame. I'm looking at a 5-minute chart here, but the same concept. You're going to see these same types of patterns play out on daily charts, weekly charts, hourly charts. It's all the same. You're still trailing it by 1 bar and then whatever other tactic you want to add on. If you want to add a little buffer, or you want to use the 2 candle version, it works on any time frame. The positive is you don't have to hold through any pullbacks. When the pullback starts is when most people start to make mistakes. They've ridden a nice trend down. Now the price is starting to move against them, and they wonder what to do. No matter what, you should have a strategy that tells you what to do. If you're struggling with knowing what to do during a pullback, this may help you by just avoiding the situation altogether. You can still capture big profits. This was a big trend. You could have captured this big trend with a little bit of a buffer, or the 2 candle version. You could have been in through pretty much this entire trend up till about probably this point. You would have got stopped out no matter which method you were using. But still, nice run up to there. And this one, definitely a nice run, potentially down into here, but even here if you were using just the base model. It reduces risk very quickly, as we saw. Even when the price doesn't run your direction, you can often get out at break even or for a small loss. So I mentioned that in this other point here. When you're using this type of method, you're going to end up with lots of small winners and small losses. with the occasional big winner. And that's not a bad strategy to have. Lots of small winners, some small losses. Hey, that's pretty good. If you can get out of lots of your trades break even, and you make a little bit on most of them, and then you get the occasional trade like this where you just get a big run and you're making 8 to 1, 10 to 1, 5 to 1 reward to risk, that's going to really work in your favor over the long run. You're going to be able to compound your account. The downside of this is that you can get stopped out prematurely, especially with the base model. This one was just starting to get going, and it would have stopped you out. You would have had to look for a re-entry. And I do mention that, though. You can look for a re-entry. Not really a big deal, but that can complicate things, especially if the price is moving quickly, as it did here, drops below, and then just keeps running. So you would have had to possibly drop down to a 1 minute chart or something like that, or a lower time frame to look for another entry now. So that could be an issue. It throws in a bit, maybe a little extra stress, but it also reduces some in the sense that you don't have to hold through pullbacks. So it can give you premature entries, but if you're okay with re-entering, that's not really an issue. It does require monitoring. You have to move your stop loss after every single price bar if it's moved in your direction or it's changed the level that your stop loss should be at. So that is going to require monitoring. That's not too bad if you're a day trader. If you're a swing trader trading an hourly chart, you probably don't want to get up every hour of the night to adjust your stop loss. The good thing about this is that often you won't have to because you get out of your trades fairly quickly. 5, 6, 7 hour trades. You can probably get out of it before you go to bed, or will be trailed out of it before you go to bed, but you never know. It's also fairly easy to automate this. You're basing it on the closing prices plus whatever buffer, so you could automate this and have an expert advisor automated thing do this for you. I am not an expert on automated stuff, so I'm not sure how you would do that, but I manually monitor my trades and adjust them, and if I'm going to bed, maybe just decide, you put in your trading plan that you close out the trades and just leave them at that. So you can simplify the process that way, come up with your own guidelines for how you want to use this. This is, as I said, the base model of the strategy, and then you want to add your own little flair to it to make it fit your trading, your time frames, your lifestyle, and hopefully it can help you stay in for some of those bigger winners and also keep your losses a little bit smaller if you're having trouble with pullbacks and once the price action gets a little bit choppier. So until next time, happy trading.